The Azores are as much paradise as Hawaii was 30 years ago, some Americans say. It's like a place still undiscovered and unspoiled by tourists with beautiful nature and friendly and warm people. And most importantly, the prices are still affordable for the majority. Perhaps this archipelago has remained unknown to the majority of its location because the islands are scattered right in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean and are about 1,400 kilometers away from the nearest continent. Or maybe because sun-hungry tourists prefer islands and coasts covered with white sand. However, those who are interested in unique places, who prefer to exchange lying on the beach for hiking through volcanic mountains and endemic forests, who prefer the waves of the Atlantic Ocean and the roar of the wind instead of the hustle and bustle of tourists, such travelers have long ago discovered the Azores. We have also finally visited here and have a lot to show and tell. The Azores archipelago is nothing more than the peaks of high underwater mountains standing in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. Or rather, these are 9 islands of volcanic origin that have never been connected to the continents. As a result, plants and animals can be found here that are found nowhere else in the world. The plants loved this soil rich in volcanic minerals, and they were also spoiled by the climate, which is always humid and relatively warm, thanks to the Gulf Stream passing near the islands. This is how everything developed and took shape for several million years, until people arrived somewhere in the 15th century, and then we already know how everything goes. What's left now is what's left. Some regrowth, some new invasive plants mixed in. And now we have the still unique and eye-catching landscape of the archipelago. People have inhabited all the islands of the Azores, but tourists first come to the largest island, São Miguel, where the largest airport is located. As soon as we arrive, we are immediately struck by how green this island is. And from the first second, we feel the humidity that will accompany us for the next 2 weeks. Besides, it's warm, it's nice, and that's good. We put on shorts and realize that 70% of the clothes we brought will be unused again, as if the month of October should be cooler. But the temperature here rarely drops below plus 15 degrees Celsius even in winter, thanks to the Gulf Stream that flows here. But this current also brings a lot of precipitation, which is why all the peaks of the island are covered in fog. Sometimes it rains, sometimes the sun shines. As a result, for the first few days, we only have to explore the coast of the island. And here we find some pretty amazing stuff. The entire coast is made of completely black rocks, and huge ocean waves have carved rock formations of various shapes, grottos, arches, natural pools, and hexagonal columns, which are formed when hot lava cools very quickly. It seems that everything here is determined by volcanoes. This kind of landscape is unusual for us and everything catches our eye. For example, like this small island. It would seem that this is an artificial round pool made in the middle of this small island. But really, it's a naturally formed formation. It's just an old volcano, slightly eroded by water waves and destroyed by earthquakes. True, earthquakes are also common here. Right next to this islet, a landslide caused by one such earthquake destroyed the island's capital 500 years ago. About 5,000 people died. Now this city has been rebuilt, but it has not regained the status of the capital of the island. The city of Ponta Delgada, which has become the capital for a long time, has a somewhat old town, many parks and many restaurants, but maybe about the food a little later. When driving around the island, the first thing you notice is the fairly decent roads. The island is green and blooming. There are many flowers of all kinds. Often the roadsides are planted with hydrangeas. Beautiful flowers, but they are imported, probably imported from Asia or America. The plants also attract attention, some not seen at all, and some seen in New Zealand, Southeast Asia, or some other distant land. By the way, not all the trees were cut down on this island of São Miguel, and in some places you can find completely untouched forested areas. And the deforested areas were first given to sheep, and now also to cows. It is said that the cows here are the happiest in the world because they graze freely. There is a lot of water, grass. They usually have a great view of the ocean, and the weather is always warm. I must try the cheeses made from their milk, I thought. And really, I liked the cheeses. The volcanoes should be thanked for the extremely fertile soil of the island. Adding a warm and humid climate, we get greenhouse conditions for all kinds of plants to grow. They say almost anything can be grown here. A few centuries ago, when the Portuguese were returning from their colonies, the Azores were often a stopover. Here they planted the plants and spices they brought back. Oranges and lemons were among the fruits that were brought and were well received. At one point, the majority of orange exports to Europe came from here. But some kind of orange tree pest got into the islands and all the farms of these fruits collapsed. Instead, they tried to grow another exotic fruit, pineapple, and they took off quite well. Greenhouses are used to maintain humidity throughout the year. In its heyday, São Miguel Island had about 3,000 pineapple greenhouses. Thus, the Azores became the only place in Europe where pineapples are grown. They are somewhat smaller, but are said to stand out for their taste because they are unusually sweet. You can learn about pineapple cultivation by walking through the pineapple greenhouses located near the capital, Ponta Delgada. Here you can taste not only the pineapple itself, but also drink pineapple beer or liqueur. Another such well-established and important plant at that time was the tea tree. A century ago, there were as many as 14 tea plantations in this small island. Ultimately, the farmers could not withstand the strong competition from Asia and Africa, and currently only 2 plantations remain on the island. Interestingly, the major pests of tea do not survive in the changing climate of the archipelago, which is why no pesticides are used in tea cultivation. Pure organic tea is obtained. The Azores are again the only place in Europe where tea is grown commercially. By the way, some coffee is also grown on the island, but it is insignificant. Do you remember my video about Iceland? There were many geysers, and in general, the whole island was volcanically active. You remember that the cause of volcanic activity is the Eurasian and North American plates, which are pulling away from each other. It is exactly the same story with the Azores, because these islands are scattered on the same mid-Atlantic ridge that runs through the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. As a result, you will also find places where you can bathe in warm or even hot water. The water even bubbles in some places and looks dangerous. You can swim safely in specially equipped places. Since it's not as cool outside as it is in Iceland, sitting in the hot water was not very appealing to us. There is even such a city on the island, where almost in its center, steam rushes from underground, bubbling fumaroles and mineral water gushes out. This is the town of Furnas. Locals say that in the past it was possible to come here freely, cook food in specially equipped places underground, have a picnic, bathe in hot springs. And it was all free. But after the influx of tourists, everything became paid, controlled. Now food is made underground only for restaurants or those who pay. A stew is usually prepared. A large pot is taken. Various meats and vegetables are added there. The pot is buried underground and left to simmer for about 4 or 5 hours. We ate this stew a couple of times. Meat lovers will definitely like it. The city of Furnas also has one of the most beautiful parks on the island. Throughout the island, we can find many impressive parks with endemic vegetation and plants from all over the world. But Furnas Park left almost the biggest impression on us. I personally had never been to such a park before, and as a lover of greenery, I was very impressed by this park. And after a walk, you can relax in thermal pools or bubble baths, which are located right in the middle of the park. And of course, our favorite thing about São Miguel Island is the picturesque lookout points called miradoras. They offer wonderful views of the vastness of the ocean, volcanic coastal rocks or volcanoes or their craters. There are lots of these sites all over the island, and they are quite easy to reach, usually by car, but sometimes you have to walk. One such mirador is also on top of an old abandoned hotel. The hotel was built in almost the most impressive place on the island, but due to too little tourism, the hotel went bankrupt and was left to the will of fate. The humid and warm climate quickly took over and turned this hotel into a ghost. The entrance here is blocked, and everyone who goes here is responsible for themselves. As soon as you enter it, it becomes uncomfortable because you don't know when a brick or a board will fall from above. Despite the dangers, it is always full of people, especially risk-taking young people. It was a rather difficult task to find the stairs to the top until we finally zigzagged to the roof overlooking the most famous place of this island. It is a huge volcanic crater with 2 blue and green lakes. It is the photo of this place that you will see first if you enter the word Azores in Google. There are many lookout points around this crater where you will probably find many tourists as well. As I mentioned, this place has become an icon of the entire Azores. There will be quite a lot of tourists in other parts of the island as well, as there are international flights to this island. Most of the time, people limit themselves to this island, admire it for a week and return to the mainland. But the Azores are made up of 9 islands, and we decided to visit most of them to get a clearer picture of what the Azores are. But about other islands in other videos. There will be less tourists, lots of good food, wine, volcanoes, cruel traditions, and very warm people. Don't forget to travel, because once you taste travel, you can't stop.